All right, welcome back to another episode of Mainly Hoops. Today we're going to be talking about Indiana versus Marquette in Chicago. Marcus, what are your initial thoughts on this game on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, neither of these teams have really played anybody. I mean, Marquette played Albany and Southern. Their annual game against Southern. Indiana played another SWAC team in Alabama A&M. The thing that's stood out to me, so far through Marquette's games, and it's going to be something to monitor. It's like Indiana didn't. It's a small sample size, but Indiana didn't allow a lot of 3-point attempts the other night. Only 15 against Alabama A&M. Obviously, some of that probably just has to be like Alabama A&M can't really shoot it. But Marquette shot it. They shot 63s through 2 games, 36 against Southern yesterday. They're really trying to get it up. It seems to be a real point of emphasis, and it kind of has to be. We've talked about Marquette. They don't really have any interior presence. Like Ben Gold's a guy even that just like wants to sort of pick and pop and float the perimeter. You're never really going to play through him inside. He took 6 shots last night against Southern. 5 of them were threes. So like for the Marquette offense, it's I'm going to be interested to see, if they keep shooting the 3 at this high of a clip. They have Chase Ross, obviously, who can get downhill. But aside from that, it's just a little bit different looking of a Marquette team. They don't have that Cam Jones or Tyler Kolek to really get downhill against the opposing defense. Then on the Indiana side, Wilkerson and DeVries were really good. Reed Bailey had his way with Alabama A&M, which we've had our concerns with him. But he's a good piece. It's really an intriguing matchup because neither team really has like a strong front court presence, right? It's not, they don't really have anyone daunting in the front court on either side with Reed Bailey and Ben Gold. So, I don't know, really, it's kind of a weird matchup in my opinion. I don't really know what to make of this game. I haven't seen enough from Indiana yet. We've talked about with DeVries, it's a whole new roster. So I think it's just hard to kind of forecast off of one game against Alabama A&M what they're truly gonna look like. But just based on initial reactions, like Lamar Wilkerson did what we thought he was going to do. He scored the basketball. DeVries had 18 and 11. They both made 4 threes apiece. Outside of that, they didn't really shoot the 3 all that well as a team. 2 for the rest of the team was 2 for 6. So, it's not really, just not a ton of shooting outside of those 2 guys. But, I do think it'll be a fun game. I'll be interested to see kind of the new look Marquette versus the brand new roster of Indiana.
Yeah. Cody, what about you? What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm interested to see, a couple things on both sides. For Marquette, it is, can this offense actually perform against like high level competition? I know they haven't really faced the most daunting of competition yet, but Shaka Smart is asking, a lot of the guys that he's, developing internally to step up in roles. Like they don't necessarily have that Cam Jones or Tyler Kolek walking through the door, like Marcus mentioned, but they're going to ask Chase Ross to kind of be that guy. And I did kind of like what I saw the other day, against Southern. His passing ability was, I think a little bit better than last year, a little bit more improved. I just think it's with more opportunity. I think he's, making better decisions with the ball in his hands. I think that'll be important. And then obviously with Sean Jones coming back from injury last year, he's a guy that can kind of take the pressure off of Ross from a ball handling sense. But I'm kind of just interested to see how, is this offense talented enough to compete against power conference competition? And, like I mentioned, I I do like what I saw from a few of these guys. Like I like what I saw from Lowry. I think he's an improved shooter. He looked a little bit more comfortable, in a bigger role. So, I mean, some of these guys can put rim pressure on to kind of bother this Indiana front court a little bit. I know there's Indiana's gonna have to play Sam Alexis a little bit more if Chase Ross and those guys continue to get downhill against them. And actually, I do think Sam Alexis is, I think better than he's kind of perceived to be. I think he's a much better rim protector. He's listed at 6'8", but I think he plays a lot bigger than that. And then on the Indiana side, I'm interested to see how they handle the pressure of Marquette. And, my first thought is I think they handle it pretty well because they can throw 5 guys out there on the floor at the same time that can handle the ball, can make decisions, have all played have all been some sort of an offensive hub for their teams, for their respective teams at one point in time. I know this is like a brand new roster. But like a lineup of like Connor Way, Wilkerson, DeVries, Connor Enright, and Reed Bailey, I think can, kind of bother this Marquette defense. Like if they're going to try to pressure, I do think there's a lot of guys on the floor that can play make. I think there's a lot of guys that can make shots. They can all kind of play off of each other, particularly DeVries and Wilkerson, and then some guys coming off the bench, like a Trent Sisley is a guy that can, kind of capitalize when this Marquette defense is in scramble mode a little bit. And like a guy like Josiah Miles as well. I don't think he's going to play like a massive role, but I do think they have like some off-ball shooting options if need be. And I think Sam Alexis is also going to be important in this aspect. Like either you play Alexis and Reed Bailey together, or you kind of platoon those minutes. And I think Alexis will be important on the offensive glass against a Marquette team that, is a little bit thinner up front. And that's one area that you can really get this Marquette defense. So ultimately I am intrigued to see, aspects of these teams on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think this game is what's the spread on this? It's projected to be pretty close, isn't it?
I think 1.5. I'm not completely sure what it's actually going to come out at, but I think 1.5 or 2.
Okay. Well, just to switch it up a little bit, Marcus, who do you think is Indiana's X factor for this game? What player is the key to this game for them?
I think it's still Tucker DeVries. I think he's the guy that, we saw in a small sample size last year at West Virginia before he got injured, just how good he can be. Can he really handle this Marquette pressure? It's really kind of him and Wilkerson, but I don't know. Like I just think I think DeVries is just more so the go-to guy. I think he's a really underrated passer. At 6'7". So, for me, it's DeVries just because he has the most to him. Like I said, he put up like 18, 11, and 5 in his last game. And I think this is another key spot against a good opponent in Marquette, where he's going to be able to really make his mark here in an Indiana uniform.
Cody, what about you for Marquette? What player you think is the key for them and their biggest X factor in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of candidates, and it could just be like the whole backcourt group in general. Those guys just stepping up into bigger roles against better competition to kind of see who, not who wins out, because ultimately I think Ross is the number one option. But if these guys are able to play up at a high level, I'll go with Zayd Lowry as kind of that number 2 option to be able to take some pressure off of Ross as a scorer. This is a gettable Indiana defense as well. Obviously, Marquette's going to have to operate in a half-court setting at a little bit of a higher level because Indiana will completely, take away the transition game. Darian DeVries has been known for that. He did it at Drake. He did it in his year at West Virginia. He likes to really control the pace. And, this is a Marquette offense that probably projects to be a little more transition reliant. So I'm going to need to see those guys operate a little bit better in a half-court setting because there's not like a real high level pick and roll operator that I would trust. Like you could always rely on Cam Jones or Kolek to get into a high ball screen late in a shot clock. But I'm not completely sure if that guy is on this roster at this point in time. So I think we're gonna kind of find out what this Marquette offense is in a half court setting.
Yeah, Marquette games are certainly as entertaining as most. So should be a fun one to check out. You guys have any final thoughts? I know you guys kind of hinted at it. Want to throw in your pick for the game?
Yeah, I'm gonna take. I think I'm gonna take Indiana in a tight one, just because I think Marquette's still like even Chase Ross as like the primary guy. I still like. I think he still has some learning to do in that role. Right, he's played 2 games against lesser competition. I think Indiana has more sure things of guys that have like been the number one option or been, a guy that teams have looked to for offense for multiple years, right? And this Marquette team, I still think, is still figuring it out. This is going to be their first game against true power competition. I just don't think they're quite there yet. So I think it's a tight one. I think maybe Indiana wins by like 5.
Cody, you want to throw another score prediction?
Yeah, I'll take Indiana here. I like I mentioned, I like how their offense kind of can handle the pressure of Marquette with their defense overall. I just think they have a lot of playmakers on the floor, a lot of guys that are able to make decisions on the fly. So I'll take Indiana in a. I don't know. It's hard to kind of determine. I think the pace is going to be rather slow, so I think it can be a game that gets played in the 60s. But I'll say Indiana wins it 71-63.
Should be fun to watch Shaka Smart in a defensive stance on the sideline. So,
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Be sure to be on the lookout next week for more videos coming.